Let's now speak to the president of Georgia, Salome Zourabichvili. Madam President, you've been calling for and endorsing anti-government protests in Georgia. We're seeing the use of water cannons, protesters being arrested. What do you make of it?
It's not only water cannons and arrest. There is a systemic violence against the protesters that is following the systemic violence against the Georgian population when they were deprived of their voice in the elections, when they have been deprived gradually of each and every independent institution in the country. That is a whole Russian system that is taking foot in Georgia, and that is what the Georgian population massively is protesting in Tbilisi these days. And what is very new in Georgia, the protests are extended to all the major cities in Georgia. The protest is also gaining in the public service, where people are signing public protests or defecting, resigning from their jobs, including in the diplomatic community, especially in the embassies in the European Union.
Right.
This is a massive national protest against the usurpation of power and the attempt to drag Georgia towards Russia or in Russia.
President, please clarify something for our viewers. Protesters took to the streets specifically because the government announced it would delay talks to join the EU. The government appears to be justifying the delay by saying the country's in turmoil. Is there some circular reasoning going on here?
Well, the government is the so-called government, because the elections were rigged completely. There was a systematic stealing of the elections, so they're not. The parliament is not valid, and the government neither. But this country was going steadily towards European integration. We got the candidate status last December. And since then, since February of this year, with the Russian law first, and with a number of measures, the then government started to take this turn from the European Union direction, orientation, that has been wanted by Georgia for as ever as Georgians can remember, towards Russia. And it's enough to look at the Russian statements that congratulate the Georgian leaders of the Georgian Dream, that we call now the Georgian Koshmar. They congratulate them for the turn they have taken. And that is unacceptable for the population. So the resistance of the population is to this radical turn, which is going against the constitution, because the Georgian constitution provides for the Euro-Atlantic path and asks each and every institution to do its utmost to guarantee and advance Georgia on this path.
You've just repeated your rejection of the election results that saw the Georgian Dream Party maintain its majority in parliament. Is there still any hope for the Georgian opposition, which says it will boycott parliament?
Well, it is boycotting parliament. It's also to be noted that none of the democratic Western European partners of Georgia have recognized those elections after more than a month. That is already a very strong signal. More is to come from our American partners as well as from our European partners, who are going to probably rediscuss the situation in Georgia at the European Council of mid-December. The European Parliament has not recognized the elections, is calling for new elections, and that is what the Georgian population is asking. It is not asking for a revolution. It is not asking for anything unconstitutional. It is asking for having elections that were stolen, and the systemic Russian type of scenario that stole the elections is very clear and demonstrated. And it needs now to have new elections in new conditions. And probably the EU technical mission that is expected to come here should be the one that will determine how to rectify all these irregularities, frauds. What are the measures to be taken to preserve the next elections for a repeat of what has happened?
Madam President, you say that the opposition is not calling for a revolution, but do you think that the situation could potentially escalate to that critical point?
There is nothing to show that, because the protesters on the streets are very peaceful. They are demanding two things. They are demanding the return of their European pass and new elections. There is no other call of any kind, and everything has been extremely peaceful until the moment when the violent dispersion of the protest starts, and probably you have seen some of the pictures of that. And despite that, all the protests continue also with legal forms, with lawyers that are taking the case up of the protesters that have been beaten. So we are a very law-abiding country. We need to remain law-abiding and remain in the constitutional framework. Those that are out of the constitutional framework today, in many regards, are the de facto leaders that came out of these rigged elections. They are not respecting the constitution. They are not respecting the will of the people. And that's where we have to bring them back and bring back the country in its right European path.
Well, we will be watching developments along as you surely will as well. Madam President of Georgia, Salome Zourabichvili, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.